Apple is the world's biggest company with a market cap of over $2.7 trillion. But did you know that Apple was third for video game revenue in 2021? This shouldn't be real. Have you ever thought of Apple as a game studio? Exactly. Then how did they pull this feat? Well, stay tuned as we look at how Apple makes money and its relationship with the game industry. You know what Apple's most famous for, and it's obviously not Apple Arcade, so let's get straight to the point. Most of Apple's revenue comes from the iPhone, and its products make up over $316 billion, or 80% of its revenue. Then where did the video game revenue come from? At the bottom of this chart, you'll see a little note that says services net sales include sales from payment and other services. And then you see this little note mentioning the App Store sales are increasing. So good job, Apple. Or is it a good job? There are two problems here. The first is that Apple takes a whopping 30% revenue cut from apps. Sure, they take only 15% from apps earning less than $1 million a year, but that's obviously not where the big bucks come from. And remember, revenue doesn't equal profit. So there may even be cases where Apple earns more than the developers of a certain app. The second problem is that Apple doesn't deserve this massive cut. Take a look at the gross margin percentage. The App Store has a margin of over 75%. That's insane. So naturally this has been controversial. In 2022, Elon Musk actively spoke out, saying it's like having a 30% tax on the internet. Okay, maybe Elon isn't the best person to quote here. Let's try again. In 2020, Epic Games sued Apple after Fortnite was removed from the App Store because Epic tried to bypass Apple's payment system. Epic scavenged internal Apple emails and used them against Apple. Their argument was that Apple created a closed ecosystem that forced developers to share an unreasonable amount of revenue with Apple. Epic showed how Apple had meticulously planned to keep people within their ecosystem from the start, and how the App Store started as something not intended to make money on, then quickly changing the discussion to how to split revenue once the money started rolling in. Now this argument makes Apple look pretty evil, but Apple's argument makes things real interesting. Apple struck back, arguing that the iOS is the best operating system and that Epic actually asked for a special deal while hiding information on their biggest update. They also claim that the 30% revenue cut is common and that Apple is involved in under 40% of all gaming transactions, so it's not a monopoly. I wonder who makes all the money then? Anyhow, it's a mess. I mean, you do have to give Epic credit for being consistent. While not directly relevant, Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games, spoke out against the current state of gaming platforms at 2020's DICE.
Software distributed outside of Google Play operates at an immense disadvantage. To get the application installed, instead of clicking an install button once, as on Google Play, you have to go through a really scary series of security dialogues and often change settings.
And the 5% cut for Unreal Engine and the 12% cut on the Epic Game Store are generous regardless of the complaints people have. Then why'd they secretly ask Apple for a special deal? And most platforms do get a 30% cut, so is Apple really the culprit? What about the Epic Game Store? What if it was made so that Epic could get some of that juicy platform revenue? And what about Apple? They suddenly cut fees for smaller apps after the lawsuit. Was that a coincidence? Did they really reject Xbox Cloud because they couldn't approve individual content? They sure seem to have beef with game companies, that's for sure.
Platform extracting unfair monopoly profits. You can process a Visa card transaction for 2.5% to 3.5%.
I have so many questions, and unfortunately no one has the answers. I mean, who knows what's fact and what's fiction when it comes to corporate battles? Both sides obviously have to make the other side the bad guy, but maybe the answer is in Tim's DICE speech.
Operate the Epic Games Store at a 12% store fee. We can build a very profitable business around this. The 30% business model is a result of Apple and Google marking up their actual payment processing operating costs by a factor of 5 or 6.
From a broader perspective, the real argument is the revenue split. But why hasn't it been an issue until now? Is it because Fortnite blew up and Epic doesn't want to share money with Apple and Google? The 30% cut was obviously very generous and even questioned when Steam first released. Well, remember how Super Mario 64 was $60 in 1996? That's almost $117 in today's dollars. Pretty crazy since Mario games on the Switch are still $60. So in a way, games have actually become cheaper, and increasing development costs have always been a concern, even being the topic of a GDC talk way back in 2005. An increase in costs, lower game prices, and a hefty revenue cut form a Bermuda Triangle that has made game development harder and harder, and maybe it's long past the time for developers to address this. And listen, I hate freemium games and season passes as much as any other gamer, but I can't help but think maybe these business models are a reaction to the challenges in today's gaming market. I know. Many game companies still make a truckload of money, so it's hard to understand why they complain about money, and I'm totally with you on that. It's a shame the gaming landscape is becoming something we might not be able to look fondly at 10 years down the line. But on the other hand, I can't help but wonder, in a world where game prices are much higher, I would have been pretty sad as a broke kid. But maybe we wouldn't be seeing so many half-made games or a day one patch for almost every single game out there.
We have to ask ourselves as an industry, what do we want to be? Do we want to be like this, like Las Vegas, full of hotels, full of slot machines, and bikini babes trying to drag people in to get them to play the slot machines? Do we want to be this, or do we want to be worldwide, highly respected creators of entertainment products that customers can trust?